What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Superman and Lois, Season 1, Episode 7, Man of Steel. So, this is a pretty interesting episode as far as the main plot is concerned, because we finally get to learn a little bit more about this guy, this Irons. His full name escapes me. We did learn his full name in this episode, though. But we got to see a little bit about his Earth, what was going on. You know, him and Lois, we get to see their daughter that they had, and we kind of got to see a little bit about what Superman did at the beginning of, I guess, everything. Now, we still don't know exactly what happened, why Superman turned evil on that Earth, but you can kind of understand if he doesn't quite know what caused Superman to do this, maybe he does blame him. But I guess I do still want to see, we know he's not evil. You know, like Lex Luthor, he just has an obsession with Superman. He thinks Superman is too powerful. He wants to be the most powerful one. And so because of that, that's constantly why he's trying to kill Superman. And obviously in Supergirl, he's trying to kill both of them. But it's definitely, he's power hungry. He wants to rule over people, but he sees Superman as a threat to that. Irons doesn't seem like he's evil. You know, he seems like a guy who's been through a lot, and Superman was the cause of a lot of that on his Earth. So I do wonder if he starts to see that this Superman is maybe somehow different than the one on his Earth, or if they find a way to stop whatever Morgan Edge's plan is that might have caused Superman to go crazy on his Earth. I don't know what the deal is going to be, but I wonder if he'll find it in himself to sort of, I guess, change his mind. It honestly kind of reminds me a little bit of, what was his name? The God Butcher. The one that Christian Bale played in Thor Ragnarok. Or not Thor Ragnarok, Thor Love and Thunder. Crap, what was his name? I want to say it was Gore, but I don't think that's it. I don't know. But one of the things that I did like about his character was that he wasn't wholly evil. There was corruption involved with the blade that he was using. But you could understand his plight a little bit. You know, they prayed to this god that they believed in and found out later kind of a dick. And his whole people and his daughter died because of that guy. Yeah, you could kind of understand why he's like, you know what, screw all of the gods then. So in the same way, you kind of sympathize seeing what happened on his Earth. You kind of sympathize with why he wants to get rid of Superman. But if he starts to see the error of his ways, or if he starts to see that this Superman can be trusted, does that mean that he'll change his mind at some point? Or is he so one-track minded that it doesn't matter what proof is thrown in his face, he's going to be convinced that Superman's always a threat? That's where I do want to learn a little bit more about him, and maybe we'll get to know more about him in the next episode. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good episode in that regard. As far as the stuff going on with Morgan Edge, you know, don't really know exactly what his plan is in all this. Obviously, he wants to get the X-Kryptonite out of the mine, but it seems like everything worked out maybe a little too well for him, so I'm wondering if maybe he somehow is using Irons in some way. Like, maybe he realized this would be a good guy to send after Superman, so he, like, brought him over from another... I don't know if that's even possible, but just something that came to mind whenever Leslie heard what happened, you know, with Superman being attacked. It almost seemed like she kind of was like, just according to plan. So it almost makes me wonder if they know about Irons being on this Earth. There's just something that popped into my mind and made me wonder if Morgan Edge was the reason that he was able to come over from another timeline or universe. Also, they did confirm that, like, the idea of the multiverse exists, so that is a little confusing. Obviously, you know, I know this isn't tied to the Arrowverse, but at the same time, it is weird to see these actors that were in the Arrowverse in another show, and then the idea of the multiverse is still a thing here, where it's not in those other... Anyways. But no, finding out that apparently the AI in the suit that he was wearing was programmed to recognize its wearer as Captain Luthor no matter what. I like that, because it did add that suspense and mystery of, like, wait, is this Lex Luthor? So it makes sense in a storytelling perspective, because it keeps us on our toes and makes us unsure of who this guy even is. But the stuff with the kids, though, this is where I feel like is probably the most CW story so far, Because again, I do like how they're handling the kids for the most part, because they are written like teenagers, in my opinion. But at the same time, they're not wholly unlikable. At at the same time, though, what I don't really like about it at this point, and I know it's only the first season, but even then, this storyline of something happens that causes one of the brothers to get upset with the other one, and then it's kind of wrapped up nicely by the end of the episode. I feel like that's happened almost every episode now. You know, like so and so is mad at the other brother, and then they do something, and then they get mad, and then blah blah blah, and then by the end of it, okay, yeah, I'm sorry I did this. It's okay, brother, we're good. It's getting a little repetitive, you know, and especially in this one. This one was probably the most frustrating because of how just coincidental it all was. Like, of course, Jordan gets the idea to focus his super hearing in on Sarah right at the moment that she's talking to his brother, and of course at this time his brother is trying to be nice and just be there for her as a friend, and he takes it the wrong way, and it's just, I don't know, the whole misunderstanding thing, and they get mad at each other about that, and it's kind of dumb, you know? And even then, at the end of it all, I expect Jordan to be like, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to listen in on you guys. It's just, I thought to use her as a focusing point right at that moment. So I wasn't trying to spy on you guys. It just sort of accidentally happened. They didn't even have him say that, because I feel like that would have cleared up a lot of the air surrounding it. So, I don't know. It just, for me, it was definitely, this story in this episode with them felt a lot more CW than the rest of the show has felt. The rest of the show feels like it's not a part of the Arrowverse. You know, it's, first of all, I haven't talked about it yet. I will say the filmography and the CGI in the show, pretty damn good. Like, I know, I don't think they have much of a budget on the CW in most of these shows. What they're able to do, though, in this show, it feels, I don't know, it feels a lot less rubbery than what I see in, like, The Flash or in Supergirl. So I really like the cinematography, I think, in this show a lot more than the rest of the CW Arrowverse. So because of a lot of, you know, the acting, the writing, the way it looks, it does feel like it's its own separate thing, and it feels like it's on a little bit higher level, in my opinion, than the rest of the Arrowverse. So that storyline, whenever I saw he was looking at the picture of Sarah, I knew they were just having a conversation. I was just like, oh, please don't do this, and they did it. I'm like, don't fall into that pitfall. Don't give me the crappy CW writing, please. I don't want that. But anyways, we'll see what happens next. That's it for this first episode, so on to the next one. I'll see you there. And now episode 8, Holding the Wrench. Damn, that episode got heavy. Yeah, I mean, again, the writing in the show, it's not, I wouldn't say it's flawless. You know, there are obviously some moments that definitely feel a little bit more simplified. But there are some moments that just, you can tell they write character drama and dilemma very well. And a lot of the dialogue, it feels pretty natural, but it also feels meaningful. You know, they don't just have conversations to just talk about whatever. So there's a lot about this episode. I mean, finding out about Natalie and what that name meant to Lois, why she ended up blowing up on Jonathan, and even Jonathan's reaction at the end when he hears about what Natalie meant to his mom. I mean, that scene, it really evoked a lot of emotion, because you could just tell the realization on his face when he realized, okay, yeah, I can kind of understand why she got a little upset in all of that. Because, I mean, first of all, just seeing somebody who apparently was married to you in another world is already, it's weird. And I can't remember if they made that joke in this episode or the last one, but it's a good line. It's like, I mean, we've handled stuff like this before. It's like, what, a guy who hates me because I killed you, who was his wife in another timeline? I would say that's pretty new ground. But yeah, a lot of this episode, though, is just pretty straightforward, but well done. The whole thing with Sarah and her dad it's still kind of more of a side story, like the whole Cushing family going through their individual dramas, you know, with the dad trying to support Morgan Edge, the mom not trusting him but trying to play nice, the daughter trying to fit in at school, but her dad betrays her in this episode. I mean, it's all stuff that it's okay. It's just definitely not quite as interesting as the rest of the story. But I did like whenever Jordan got up to play the piano for her. It was a good scene, and even though it did feel a little, because I know Jordan was talking about he could play the piano earlier, but the way he made it made it sound like I just can't anymore. But I guess maybe with the powers, he has a newfound confidence that allows him to take these risks. But I mean, it was a cute little scene, and it was nice to see. I don't know, something about the way they handle whenever like one of the brothers does something that the other one is proud of. I enjoy those scenes because they feel pretty realistic to me. Um, but yeah, everything to do with Irons though, it's really good. Um, I don't know what they're gonna do with his character. I don't know quite what to expect from here on out. But I feel like they've done a good job setting him up as probably maybe an anti-hero, maybe somebody that is a little bit darker, willing to go to darker places to get the job done. But he is, I think, going to choose to be on the right side. I think he's starting to see that maybe this Superman can be different. I feel like the big thing for me, and maybe because one, I know like Injustice is, well, of course Injustice 2, or no, that was an Injustice 2, that was Mortal Kombat versus DC. Never mind. But no, Injustice though, knowing that story and knowing that the death of Lois Lane is what triggered Superman to turn evil in that game, that's probably why I'm thinking down this road. But also, I mean, the name of the show is Superman and Lois, so it does make me wonder if him having Lois in this timeline, was he married to anybody in the other timeline? Did he have a romantic connection in the other timeline, or was he just a superhero that saved the day and went around like, aha, I saved the day, I'm a good person. But then whenever he saw these Kryptonians, he didn't have that human connection that he has with Lois. And so it was easier for him to say like, well, these people don't trust me and these people are Kryptonians. I'm going to join the Kryptonians. If so, I feel like, even though obviously this is very risky, and I understand why they're not willing to give this information, I feel like if John figured out that Clark was Superman and that he and Lois were married, obviously it would probably raise his hatred of him a little bit because, oh, you married my wife in this timeline? You got to marry her in this timeline? But I do think it would show he does have that human connection. He does have a reason not to turn on humanity in this timeline. Maybe that would convince him a little bit more. I think he's on his way there. I do wonder if that's going to be the moment where he realizes, even though he'll be jealous, I think that might help him push it over the edge and be like, okay, yes, you are different than my Superman, because my Superman didn't have any human that he connected to. He was just a hero and that was it. So it's something that's on my mind. I figure at some point that's what we'll figure out, is that the other world Superman didn't have anybody. He was all alone, and that's what caused him to turn on humanity. But we do see the little, what's it called? Like seeds, I guess, of doubt being planted here in this episode. Because, of course, Superman finds out that they have all of this kryptonite weaponry. And to be fair, on the one hand, excuse me, on the one hand, I get why Superman is upset by that, because you have all these weapons to kill me? Really? You don't trust me? On the other hand, I also get Sam's point of view, where it's like, well, you need to prepare for the worst. I mean, what if one day you do turn, whether it's your fault or not, whether somebody tries to or what if there's a Kryptonian enemy that comes our way? We don't know what to expect, so we just have this in case we need it. It's one of those things where it's the lack of trust it creates is something that does need to be addressed, and it's something where, from Sam's point of view, he does need to have these weapons just in case, but there's no reason he shouldn't be able to tell Superman about it. And Superman, if he had come to him earlier, should be able to look at it and say, I understand why you need the weapons, but just know, you not telling me is gonna break my trust a bit. But yeah, overall, a fairly solid episode with some really heavy stuff that definitely tugs at the heartstrings, and the acting in the show is pretty good for the most part. Some of the side characters, like the one Trask guy, he was a little, I don't know, something about the way he delivered his lines just seemed a little comic booky. Just, not to doubt you, sir, but I'm gonna go get my things. Just something about the way he said it. He had like 2 or 3 lines in the whole episode, and he didn't come off as he came off as like a character to me. Like that guy, he's out there. He's a little weird. But yeah, I think that's about it though. So on to the final of these 3 episodes. I'll see you there. And finally, episode 9, Loyal Subjects, with a K instead of a C, because Kryptonians, I'm guessing. They even spell it like that in the captions too, so I guess that's just what they're called. But yeah, another really good episode. Starting to see sort of what Morgan Edge's full plan is, and we're also about to find out who he actually is. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he's also Kryptonian or if he's from a world close to Krypton, maybe. He did say brother, so I'm guessing he's going to be another Kryptonian. But yeah, I think it's a pretty well done story, though. Finding out why he needed the people of Smallville, it's because they've been exposed to the kryptonite the longest. That makes sense, and it fits within the story. It flows very well as a narrative. So I feel like they did a good job setting up why some people were experiencing the fritzing of the powers and all the stuff that happened with them compared to the people who just they're now superpowered after taking the X kryptonite on. Overall, I mean, it was good. Not really much I can think of that really. There a couple scenes stood out as really good, like when Jonathan confronted his grandfather about the whole thing. I will say, I do hope that maybe Lois goes a little bit easier on him, because I do think now his whole study of kryptonite weaponry is going to come in handy. Obviously, the reason why they were looking into this stuff is wrong. Because he didn't trust Superman, even though he really should, considering he's married to his daughter and has 2 kids. Like, yeah, he should probably trust Superman more, but ultimately these weapons are going to come in handy because now they are facing an enemy that's going to be weak to these weapons. So I hope they start to mend some bridges there, because I do think a lot of what was said is not necessarily wrong, but it was pretty harsh in the long term, and considering how he steps in to save them at the end. I feel like hopefully there'll be some forgiveness, and I think he also should realize sort of what he was doing and how that hurt people in the process. There should be a little bit of apologies on both sides to sort of mend the bridges and get them back together as a family. Because even though sometimes people talk about if family members are toxic or whatever, you should probably cut them out of your life. I do agree with that to a point, but if they are definitely taking steps to improve that, and there's a certain, I think, line where if you're doing enough, if you're trying, if you're reasoning why the mistakes were made, if you've changed yourself, maybe try to see like has there actually been any change there. It's hard because me and my family sometimes don't always get along. I know a friend of mine who, I mean, I don't know if they'll ever speak to one of their parents again because of what they did when they were younger. And sometimes it just depends on the level of hurt. There are some occasions where that level of hurt is just so bad that you're not going to be able to mend those relationships anymore. I feel like what's happened here, there's definitely been some hurt, but I think it's salvageable enough to where if Sam can start to realize the error of his ways, if Lois can start to realize he's trying to change a little bit for them, to be there for them more, hopefully that can come together, because I feel like it's always better whenever you can rely on family in the end. The other, I guess, part that I did like in this episode was getting to see Clark be a little bit more vulnerable as a father, because we've seen a little bit of that earlier this season, but now he's really starting to see the consequences of trying to be Superman and a dad at the same time, like what that can do to him, like what that can do to his family as well in the process. So I feel like those scenes were well done though, and I feel like they really captured the emotions that most people would probably be feeling if this were real life. So, the only negative thing in this episode, I think, is the fact that nobody talked to Sarah. Because obviously, what Jordan is going through, they can't tell her this. But I feel like either Jonathan or Lois, one of them, should have been like, can you tell Sarah that Jordan is sick or something along those lines? Because, I mean, obviously, Jordan, if he just tells her, I'm so sorry I was sick, she's going to be like, okay, yeah, sure, you're lying. But if somebody had contacted her before her performance and was like, hey, you might need to find another backup plan, you might need to find something else because Jordan is really sick, we don't think he's going to be able to make it tonight. And she'll have her suspicions, all of that stuff, and I'm sure at some point, she might find out about the truth of what's going on with Jordan. But I did feel like it was a little wrong that nobody even contacted her, like either Jonathan or Lois. Lois, talking to her mom all the time, so I feel like she easily could have called Lana and been like, hey, if you get a chance to talk to your daughter, Jordan can't make it tonight. And whatever excuse you want to come up with, whether he's sick, whether he got himself hurt, whatever the case. Just, again, it's one of those little things, but I think because there aren't too many issues that I have in the show, the ones that do pop up, I'm kind of like, really, did we have to do that? Like, you have to cause this, like, rift between them. You couldn't have it to where it's an easily fixable situation. Like, she could still have her doubts. She could still be like, look, Jordan, I'm not saying you're definitely lying, but I've seen this pattern before. Like, she could have her suspicions about it, but the fact that nobody mentioned it to her, now it sets up for an even bigger rift where she was just blindsided by Jordan's betrayal of her, just like what happened with her dad. So, just, again, a minor thing, but it is something that is bugging me because the writing on the show has been so good. So, but with all that being said, that's it for these 3 episodes. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Superman and Lois reviews, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Peace out.